education, another piece of legislation was passed which would allow locals to have more control over their decision-making process. And I actually see that as a good thing. The more bureaucracy, obviously, the more the cost. And to allow local control and allow the local school board members and those who are elected to represent here make those decisions on what's important to our constituents is, I think, a step in the right direction. It was something we passed out of the House. It's sitting on the Senate side, and I do believe that's something that helps us better respond to our communities because more local control, and also help lower costs because you don't have a bunch of bureaucrats sitting in Washington, D.C. who know nothing about Selma, California, making decisions for you. So that's a bill that was passed out. I can't remember the bill number, but it was passed out of the House, and hopefully the Senate acts on it and does something with it.
All right. We've had a couple that have acknowledged like a certain piece of legislation. Is Ms. Fitzpatrick here? We can have Cole talk to you about this HR 1579, and he can get your thoughts on it and your position and how you feel. It's just something that we don't have that much information here right now. So Cole will meet up with you personally. What about the funding? I believe you touched on this. What about funding for cops and other law enforcement programs? We know there will be major cutbacks.
Well, a lot of that falls on the state, but there are some federal programs that my local sheriffs, Dave Robinson, Sheriff Mims, and others have approached me that help with enforcement of drug programs. And I can't remember all the acronyms right now, but there are different programs that we've been fighting for and pushing through the appropriations process. And to make sure they stay funded is to get the appropriations bills passed and signed into law. But there are a few different programs that we're working on, and I'm supportive of and trying to move forward, but just they need a presidential signature on it. And so hopefully we'll be able to get something passed and signed.
We have a question about VA disability benefits. You have a constituent here that has contacted our office and has been happy with the results they received, but we want to know what we can do from your office to help speed up the process with the VA.
There's some legislation right now to get rid of the backlog and move things along on the VA benefits. That's actually something that, as Americans and those who basically risk their lives, put their lives on the line for our freedom, should never have to wait for their benefits. And there's some legislation now that is going through the House. I think I've actually co-sponsored it. I'm not sure the bill number right now, but it is something that I've been part of and happy to be part of, so that we don't have this issue with people having to wait for their benefits. My father-in-law is a veteran, a Vietnam veteran, and if I didn't help him with some of the issues that we see here, I think he'd kick my butt. So.
We have two questions. Is the new Affordable Health Care Act affordable? And then the second person says, Obamacare must be repealed. Any chance it can be repealed and defunded?
So that's another thing that we're running across a lot. When I met with all my local hospitals, that was their biggest concern. Their biggest concern was Obamacare and how it's going to affect them. And they're actually afraid. I think some of the, I think Selma was there as well that day. They were nervous they were going to lose and have to shut their doors. The costs, the reimbursement rates that they're going to have to suffer through, there's just no way that they're going to be able to keep their doors open. I know Kalinga's really nervous about it. I know Corcoran's very, very nervous about it. And so it's an issue that does affect care to everybody because of where we live and the reimbursement rates. Obamacare has been voted on, I think, 40 times to repeal it, and it's passed almost every time. Is the Senate going to act on it? Would the president sign it? I doubt it. That's his baby. That's his legacy. He's not going to sign to repeal it. So we're going to have to work our way through it to make sure we resolve this in a way that works. I know there's a lot of talk about defunding it, and I haven't signed the letter that's been pushed out there personally. I want to make sure that there's actually a plan. When I see people talking about it, other members in Congress or other members in the other house, when they talk about defunding it, they love talking about it, but there's no game plan there. And there are parts of the Obamacare Affordable Care Act that are mandatory, that has to be done through policy and through the authorizing committee. And there's parts that can be done through the defunding process. But at the end of the day, to defund it, you still need a presidential signature. And so if there's a game plan there, if there's a plan that works, I'll be happy to be part of it. But we have to make sure that it's done right and not risk holding the whole government hostage. And I know that a lot of people don't believe that's true. There is a situation where veterans will be paid but the person that writes those checks does not have to be paid. And so veterans could still go to work, or our soldiers can still work, but the guy that writes the check and mails it to them so they can get paid does not have to show up to work and will be part of the government shutdown, so they won't get paid. There are a lot of people, Social Security, supposedly they'll still get their checks. But no, if the person's writing their checks, send them to their house, isn't in their office because the government shut down, they won't get their checks. And so we have to be careful in what the game plan is and what the end result is and what are we willing to gamble. So I'm happy to be part of the conversation. I have voted to repeal Obamacare, and I'll continue to do it, and I'll continue to be strong on that. But I just want to make sure that whatever plan or whatever road we go down, that there is an end game, that we actually can accomplish something. We don't do stuff, or at least I don't, just for press releases. We do it because we want to help our constituents, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Okay. This question, outside the district in Clovis, knowing that water is a big concern here in the valley, are you still planning on supporting hydraulic fracturing, knowing it'll take millions of gallons from our local water?
So, water is a big issue. Hydraulic fracturing has been going on since the 60s. The amount of water in all the wells, and I've actually looked into this and verified it, the amount of water that goes into all the fracturing that's out there wouldn't amount to almost nothing. And oil production, for those who don't know, in the valley, bring a lot of jobs in. Tax revenue, and it brings a lot of revenue into my district. It is something that we have to make sure. And even the Secretary of Energy under President Obama in committee has agreed that the studies are there, the information is there, that fracturing can be done safely. It can be. And if we do it right and we do it safely, there's no reason why we shouldn't. And he finished off saying, the studies are there to prove that it can be done safely, and there's no reason why policy shouldn't reflect that. So the water situation, again, 20% allocation is the problem. The amount of water, I mean, in agriculture, we've come up with a lot of different innovative ways to save water, and we're starting to see that in the different types of crops, and we're starting to see that obviously when you drive by and you see all the hoses and you start to see some of the new technologies out there. Those are all things that help water efficiency, so that 20% allocation doesn't hurt as bad as it can and will. But at the end of the day, a 20% allocation is still 80% short of what we need. And that's where our fight should be.
Okay. By far, the biggest group of questions and concerns was regarding immigration. You touched on it a little bit. But can you talk a little bit about the necessity of border security, how you will be moving the entire issue forward, and to summarize a handful of these, keeping families together?
Hold on, let's do the water one first. On the water one, the legislation that I am working on, right now I have to make sure that I've got my side. Republicans currently control the House. So I am working right now with the House members, especially the ones that are in leadership. So Doc Hastings is the chair of the Natural Resources Committee. He's a Republican member from Washington State. And I've been meeting with Devin Nunes, Kevin McCarthy, Jeff Denham, Tom McClintock, Doug LaMalfa. Doug LaMalfa, Tom McClintock, and Jeff Denham, north of here, are the ones that actually have the water, or a good chunk of the water in their districts. And so our fight technically should be with them. But they've been at the table, they've been part of the conversation, and they want to help us solve this problem. And it's good to have those types of conversations, and we are starting to see some. Doc Hastings has actually committed to me that if we do get some legislation where we all agree on it, he would be happy to move it forward and help me get it to the Senate. But I have to first work on that legislation. And we've got language out there, members have been seeing it, and some of my water districts have been reading it and putting in their ideas. And I have also been working across the aisle. I've been working with Jim Costa. End of the day, it has to be bipartisan, because no matter how you look at it, it's still a Democrat-controlled Senate, it's still a Democrat-controlled White House. And so I can get a bill passed out of the House, but if it's not bipartisan and it does not work with both sides of the aisle, how do I get it signed? And so the main issue here is making sure that I can get out of my house first, and I'm going to work on that process, but along the process, I'm going to keep working with the other side so that when it does make it out, there's a path to getting it all the way to the president's desk. And that's my biggest goal right now, is to make sure that it is bipartisan, that it does work across the aisle, and that it, just real quick, so everybody knows, this table here, especially the ones with cameras, and the young lady that raised her hand, they're political operatives, especially the young lady that just raised her hand. Everybody knows that I'm in a targeted race, And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with people, but we also have an opportunity here to allow people that are politically opposed to me and are here for the sole purpose of interrupting this forum for my constituents. And so I'll address your questions at the end, but if you didn't go through the process.
Oh, I did, and he did address my question.
And also, as well, if you do have any questions, feel free to come on up over here and fill out
But
the
this is
questionnaire,
for my
and I'll actually
constituents.
go to your table as well.
And then what was the rest of those questions?
Regarding immigration, border security, keeping families together, and moving the issue forward.
So, immigration reform. I do support comprehensive immigration reform. The reason why I do is because border security does have to be part of it. We do have to have fix our visa system. We have to have a system in place that works so that people have the same opportunity.
You guys
all of
already
do,
asked his question, and he
to be
didn't
part of the
address
American society. Immigration has been part of our society from the get-go and since the founding of our country. So I'm happy to be part of it. But we have to make sure that we have a visa system that works. We have a policy in place that enforces that and also protects American jobs. So it does have to be comprehensive, in my opinion, because it's such a complicated issue when you go through all the different deals, all the different aspects of it, that if it's not done right and it's not done complete, we're going to have the same situation we've had for the last 40 years. So it is something that I've been part of. There's legislation out there that they're working on. I know that Chairman Goodlatte has worked on some legislation out of his committee, and Chairman McCall has worked on some legislation. And then there's that gang of 7 still working on the comprehensive side. The Senate has worked on their side as well, and they've passed theirs, and I'm actually happy they did something. Having a bill passed and signed, or passed out of their house, is actually a step in the right direction. And you may disagree with certain aspects of it. There's no deal ever come out of Washington you agree 100% with. That is not going to happen. But to have someone actually have the courage to work on an issue, pass it, and go through the process and go forward with it is actually a step in the right direction. And then we can start that debate. And then you have something to look at and complain about or celebrate and go through the process so that we can have a solution at the end of the day. And so,
What makes you think it would be enforced? We do have laws, they aren't enforced.
they're, under this administration, they've deported more people than any other administration ever. So they're actually enforcing the laws better than they've ever enforced. And I'm starting to see that, and I'm actually hearing, last week I was with a friend of mine from New York, another member of Congress, that he had a ton of farmers in his district really pounding them because they don't have a working system to allow people to come through the guest worker system.
I thought we did, and the farmers just didn't want to sign.
No, there's no working guest worker program. There is one, but it doesn't work for most farmers. And especially in the valley when you've got 350 different style of crops. And if you're going to look at dairy, one aspect. You're going to look at poultry, you're going to look at beef, you're going to look at a couple different that are year-round. Even carrots. We grow a lot of carrots here in the valley. The carrots are grown different parts of the state and even into Arizona. So there's a constant production of carrots. And then the processing facility is actually in my district. And they have to have year-round supply. So there's that aspect of it. And agriculture, and when you look into grapes or raisins or tree fruits or other different crops, those are not year-round. And then you've got some that they know exactly what day they're going to need people. They know some that they can show up and they're not ready for the people they need. So it does have to be a flexible program. It does have to be something that works. And that's most people would love to have a working system. Farmers would, but there isn't, and that's why. And I would guess that's probably one of the reasons why they've been a little more lenient on the enforcement side of it too, because they know and they've known for years that they don't have a system in place. And this fight's been going on for so many years, and the conversation comes up because we all acknowledge there's a problem, but sometimes it doesn't move forward because there's not the political will. And when it comes this close, just like in 2007, when President Bush was working on a policy, the deal that happened there was they lit up the phone lines in Washington, D.C. and pulled a few members off the vote for a package deal that probably would have worked. Now we'll see what happens on this process. I do believe we've got a good chance of getting it done. But again, if it's not done right, they're going to have a tough time getting the votes. And again, that's not even, I wouldn't even say it's a partisan issue. Luis Gutierrez, a Democrat from Illinois, was down in Bakersfield. Very strong advocate for immigration, obviously a little more to the left than most people.
Oh, my.
But no, he's been out there, and when he spoke at that forum, and I was part of that forum, he talked about how when Democrats controlled, under Obama with Pelosi and Harry Reid a few years ago, he couldn't get of the two